take a look at factoring quadratics. Now, whenever we're factoring a quadratic or a bigger polynomial, first thing we want to do, like we saw in the last video, is try and factor out a greatest common factor if possible. Now, standard form for a quadratic is written in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And if it's not in this order, we want to write it in this order here, this ax squared plus bx plus c. We're going to work with quadratics with a leading coefficient of 1 for right now. This means the polynomial is just going to start off with an x squared, and then the terms following after it. Now, the trick with doing this is we're going to try and find two numbers that satisfy the following conditions. They should add to the coefficient of x, which is our b, so they're going to add up to this number, and they're going to multiply to the number on the end, which is c. You want to be careful with the signs. Let's look at this example right here and see if we can't find some numbers that satisfy these two conditions. So in our example, x squared plus 5x plus 6, we see here that the 6 is the number that we're going to try and get two numbers that multiply together to give us here. So our options for 6 would be 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. So if I look at these two possibilities, which two can add up to give me a positive 5? Well, 2 and 3 would add to 5. Now, they both have to be positive, right? Now, does positive 2 times a positive 3 give us 6? Yes. So those are going to be the two numbers that we're going to use here. Let's look at this next one. X squared minus 3x minus 10. The number that we're trying to multiply would be negative 10. Now, I'm not going to worry about the signs just yet. We just want to try and figure out two numbers that will multiply to give us negative 10. So I could do 1 times 10, or I could do 2 times 5. And when I look at this middle number here, I see it's negative 3. Well, I can't use 1 and 10 to get negative 3, so I'd have to use 2 and 5, right? And to get negative 3, I would want to do a positive 2 and a negative 5. So if I use positive 2 and negative 5, I can multiply those. That'll give me negative 10, and if I add them, it'll give me negative 3. Now, after you find these, after this step, you're going to set up some parentheses so it looks like open parenthesis with an x inside times another parenthesis with an x inside. The numbers that you found in this step above up here, just go in the parentheses with the x. And then you can always check your factorization by using the FOIL method to distribute. Let's work a couple examples together. In example 1, we're trying to find numbers that will give us negative 3. So I could do 1 times 3, and that's really my only option. So we have to figure out how they add to give us positive 2, right? So if we did that, we would have a 3 times a negative 1. That would give us negative 3, and then if we add those, we would get positive 2. So we'll set up our parentheses here. We'll have x, and this is a positive 3, so we would write x plus 3 times x, and then we've got a negative 1 minus 1, okay? Now, let's see how FOIL works to check this. So FOIL is the device that tells us to do first, outer, inner, and then last. And so we're going to multiply the first terms together. So x times x is going to give us x squared. The outer would be x times negative 1, which is negative 1x. Inner would be 3 times x, which would give us positive 3x. And the last terms is a 3 times negative 1, which is negative 3. Now, this doesn't look exactly like what I started with here. So what I want to do is come in and combine like terms here. So negative 1x plus 3x would give me 2x. And it's positive. So this here, when we did FOIL, we ended up with x squared plus 2x minus 3, which is exactly what we started with, which tells us that our factoring of this polynomial is correct. Let's look at our next one. We're trying to find two numbers that give us negative 14. So to multiply to get 14, you could do 1 times 14. You could do 2 times 7, and those are your only options here. Since we are trying to get these to add to negative 5, we'd want to use the 2 and 7, and we'd need a positive 2 and a negative 7. So we can set up our parentheses, x plus 2 and x minus 7. On this next one, we're trying to find two numbers that multiply to get 20 and add to get negative 9. So we could do 1 times 20, we could do 2 times 10, or we could do 4 times 5. 4 times 5 would be the only way to make this work. We can't combine those to get negative 9. We can't combine those. Positive or negative to get negative 9. But we could with the 4 and the 5. And we'll notice that they both need to be negative. Negative 4 and negative 5. Let's just check that those multiply to give us positive 20. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that should work. Our factorization would then look like this: x minus 4, x minus 5. Now I'm going to pause right here and make the note, you can multiply in any order. So if you wrote the x minus 5, x minus 4, if you flip those two around, you're still going to have the exact same thing. When you FOIL, the outer and the inner are kind of interchangeable steps here. It just doesn't spell FOIL. So that's why we would say it doesn't matter what order you put these two numbers in. Last but not least, on number 4, we get two numbers that will multiply to give us 24. And it is positive. So we can do 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times, what would that be? 8. 4 times, what would that be? 6. So we've got 4 options to look through here. Now, the reason that I always start with 1 times the number is that's one that we often forget about using. And then I just go, okay, can I multiply it by 1? Can I multiply it by 2? Can I multiply something by 3, 4, and so on. So, and it's really not necessary to write, okay, 8 times 3, 12 times 2. We don't have to write those backwards, just as long as we get those factors written out there. So we're trying to find two numbers that will add to give us 14. 2 and 12 should work. That can't work. 3 and 8 can't work, and 4 and 6 can't work. They can get us close, but they can't get us 14. Right? So a positive 2 and a positive 12 will be the numbers that we would want to use here. 2 plus 12 would give us 14. So in our parentheses, we can write x plus 2 times x plus 12. Guys, this is how we factor a quadratic with a leading coefficient of 1. Thank you for watching. If you have questions about this, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd be happy to help you. And thanks for watching Old School Math.